Hi everyone, this video will be dedicated to new tomato varieties. I always enjoy talking about such tomatoes because it's really exciting to grow them, and of course, it's no less interesting to share my experiences with you.
6 dwarfs from the Prince line by Bill Yoder. Today, we're gonna talk about them.
Before we begin the review of this amazing tomato series, I'll tell you right off the bat that my co-host for this episode will be Bill Yoder himself, because no one can tell the story of tomatoes better than the one who created them.
Hi, my name is Bill Yoder. I'm the breeder of a collection of tomatoes referred to as the Prince Collection. The collection is named in tribute to the legendary musician Prince. The collection at this time consists of 6 varieties of dwarf tomatoes, 5 cherries, and 1 medium heart. The variety names are Little Red Corvette, 1999, Raspberry Beret, Controversy, Beautiful Ones, and Purple Rain. The first time I heard Prince was in 1979 on our local station B103. I heard the song I Want to Be Your Lover play on the radio, and I was all in ever since. He's been my favorite musician ever since.
This is how the love of music and, of course, the love of tomatoes led to the creation of a very interesting line of varieties. 6 completely different tomatoes, but I'll say up front that I liked every single one of them. Well, here we go, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Bill Yoder again.
Little Red Corvette was the first variety created for the Prince Collection. It is a cherry tomato, ripens to red with a purple top from the anthocyanin. It was off the album 1999, and the name came to me pretty quickly when I saw the tomatoes first ripening, being red with purple. And then the words came to me: purple, small stature plant that's very powerful, very productive, and the tomatoes are extremely tasty. So to me, those characteristics all represent Prince very well. Purple, small stature, yet powerful and explosive with the explosive flavor. So that's the first variety.
Little Red Corvette appealed to me for a number of reasons. The plants are beautiful and in my conditions grew tall, even despite the fact that it's a dwarf tomato. In midsummer, their growth was about 4 feet 11 inches or 1.4 meters, and by the end of the season was approaching 6 feet 7 inches or 2 meters. Yes, Little Red Corvette turned out to be such a big dwarf. By the way, I left a lot of stems as the strong growth figure easily allowed the plants to set a large number of fruits on them. The leaves are potato type and surprisingly compact, and the tomatoes are rounded in shape and very pretty, red in color with anthocyanin. In general, when I looked at them, the picture reminded me more of a decorated Christmas tree and certainly pleased the eye. Like other varieties from the Prince Collection, Little Red Corvette performed equally well both when grown in a greenhouse and outdoors, perfectly tolerated heat and drought, and almost did not catch any diseases, given the harvest until the frosts. And during the season I collected just some incredible amount of tomatoes, which in addition began to ripen, one of the first among all my varieties. Almost all of the fruits were nearly the same size and weighed just under 1 ounce or about 20 grams, a classic size for a cherry tomato. The flesh is bright red and the taste is sweet, with a slight acidity and a refreshing tomato flavor. It's basically a true cherry tomato, but growing on such amazingly beautiful plants. Little Red Corvette is a tasty, juicy and fragrant variety. By the way, I didn't notice any anthocyanin flavor, despite the fact that in the coloring it is clearly present. I also note the fact that the fruits are quite dense, well stored, and also equally well suited for eating raw and for canning. And in general, Little Red Corvette will, without any doubt, become a real decoration for any garden, as will the next tomato, whose name is not difficult to remember.
I was dreaming when I bred this. Forgive me if it goes astray. This one is called 1999, off the album 1999 I'm holding here. This, again, another potato leaf dwarf. The cherries ripened to yellow with an antho top, and as soon as I saw them, the 2 colors immediately made me think of the album 1999, the purple album with the yellow outlines and the lettering. The tomato has a really good flavor. It's sweet, but with a lot of complexity in there as well. which some of those flavors come from one of its parents, Amethyst Cream. Very productive, just like Little Red Corvette. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yes, the 1999 and Little Red Corvette tomatoes do indeed have a lot in common. I've grown them side by side, and they complemented each other perfectly. As Bill mentioned, 1999 also has potato-type foliage, but in my case, the plants turned out a little lower, but only slightly. In the middle of the season, their height was about 3 feet 3 inches or 1 meter, but by the beginning of autumn, it was already 5 feet 7 inches or 1.7 meters. The tomatoes are beautiful, bright yellow color with anthocyanin. The variety is no less yielding, which undoubtedly pleased me. Fruits are moderately dense, can hang on the vine for a long time and do not spoil, while you cannot be afraid that they will over-ripen. By the way, they also ripened among the earliest, and before the moment of the first tasting came, I remembered the lines from the song of the same name. Tonight, I'm gonna party like it's 1999. I wonder if you remember yourself in 1999. I, for example, remember it as I do now. It was a time of high hopes and anticipation of the new millennium. Were those hopes realized? I guess everyone will have their own story to tell here. But I still want to continue the story of the 1999 tomato and say that the fruit weighed about 1 ounce, or just over 20 grams, and by the end of the season only got bigger and approached cocktail size. On the cut, these are juicy and sunny tomatoes with yellow flesh. The flavor has a sweetness and a complementary bright tomato acidity that I really liked. This is exactly the complex flavor I look for in cherry tomatoes. Great taste as well as the beauty of the fruit in combination with high yields allow me to say with confidence that the 1999 tomato deserves the highest marks. Well, let's carry on, because there are no less interesting varieties ahead of you.
Third variety in the Prince collection is called Raspberry Beret. It's regular leaf. I never worked part-time in a 5 and dime, but I did create a really good tomato that's raspberry pink with gold stripes, nice sized cherries. The flavor is very sweet. My friend Lauren tested it and it has a very high Brix. Another very productive variety. I think you'll enjoy it.
Personally, I have no doubt about it, because I liked Raspberry Beret very much. I was especially impressed by its flavor qualities, which we'll talk about very soon. But for now, a few words about the plants. They are sturdy and strong, as dwarfs should be. Not too tall, and by midsummer they reached the mark of 3 feet 3 inches or 1 meter. But I should mention that I practically did not prune them. The tomatoes are round to slightly elongated in shape, and their coloring is exactly the same as Bill mentioned earlier. They certainly look attractive. Under my conditions, the fruit was larger than Little Red Corvette and 1999, and perhaps for this reason started ripening about 2 weeks later. They weighed more than 1 ounce, or 30 grams, which is not a small size for cherries, but the best part for me was their flavor. What a delicious variety they are. Very pleasant sweetness is noticeable from the first bite. It didn't take me long to realize that such tomatoes should be enjoyed. Raspberry Beret is a sweet and very flavorful cherry with no perceptible acidity. Unfortunately, the flavor cannot be transferred through the screen, so I can only advise you to grow and try this variety yourself. The yield was also quite good, but this can be said about the whole Prince line, further acquaintance with which we will continue right now.
The fourth variety in the Prince collection is called Controversy, off the Controversy album. This potato leaf plant produces purple cherry tomatoes. I named it Controversy because the epidermis color kept flipping back and forth for several generations. It took a long time to stabilize. I think 11 generations in 8 years. So it would flip between yellow and clear epidermis, which would make the tomatoes appear as either purple or chocolate. But the stabilized version is a purple cherry. Again, another very productive dwarf cherry tomato plant. This is Controversy.
Yes, another high-yielding dwarf, in which I absolutely agree with Bill. Plants with broad, potato-type leaves, when grown in 4 and 5 stems, reached a height of about 2 feet 7 inches or 80 centimeters by midsummer. The tomatoes are rounded in shape and purple in color, not as shiny as, for example, Little Red Corvette, but rather more velvety. Still, it's no less attractive, especially if you, like me, belong to fans of dark fruited cherries. The variety showed high resistance to hot weather and set fruits without skipping. It was easy to grow it, and I did not make any special efforts. At the same time, I harvested regularly. As with the raspberry beret, the fruits weighed just over 1 ounce or 30 grams and were about the same size. Inside, I found a dark purple flesh with greenness in the seed cavities that looked promising. And as it turned out, there were reasons for that. The flavor is complex and predominantly sweet. The acidity is hardly perceptible. There are some nuances in this flavor that are characteristic of dark fruited varieties, which are not easy to describe. But one thing I can say for sure: Controversy is a delicious cherry tomato. And it's not surprising, considering how much time Bill spent on its stabilization. And finally, we have this dwarf with dark cherry fruit, and I think it's great, as there are still not many cherry varieties among the dwarfs. Controversy certainly helps to correct this injustice. And not only controversy, but also the next variety in today's review.
The 5th variety in the Prince collection is called Beautiful Ones. It's a green when ripe cherry with a faint pink blush potato leaf plant. Very productive. Beautiful Ones is a song off the album Purple Rain. I like green when ripe cherries. I think they're beautiful, and hence the name Beautiful Ones. The cherries can range in size from a regular sized cherry to a bit of a larger cherry. And the main point of emphasis is they're very hard to tell when they're ripe because of the green when ripe attribute. So you want to pick them promptly, and if you let them over ripen, they will split. So stay on top of these. Again, this is Beautiful Ones.
Fans of green-fruited varieties will definitely like Beautiful Ones. The height and structure of the plants are much the same as the Controversy tomato, so it's a nice couple of varieties that look great together when planted side by side. Plus, despite the difference in fruit coloring, they are still just as velvety. In his story, Bill mentioned the difficulty in determining when tomatoes are ripe, but I have to say that it's not really that complicated. Yes, the color of the fruit does change only slightly at ripening, but it does change, and you will notice it. Tomatoes turn a little yellow and small pink shades appear, so it was no trouble for me personally to determine the right moment for harvesting. Yes, it may be not as easy as 1 to 3, but it's not as hard as beating Magnus Carlsen at chess. Anyway, I think you can handle it. The fruits of Beautiful Ones were noticeably larger than those of the previously mentioned tomatoes, and their average weight was around 2 ounces or 50 grams, which is rather a more usual size for a cocktail variety. The tomatoes are dense, with thick walls and emerald flesh, and when I tasted them, the first word I said was great. This is definitely a good tomato with a spicy, exotic taste. A sweet, tropical flavor that I didn't notice any acidity in. All in all, the Beautiful Ones variety is such an exotic tomato that is also complemented by a great flavor. The yield is also in good order. Therefore, on the combination of the previously mentioned factors, the variety is also my personal recommendation. But that's not all. Now we will talk about one of the most interesting tomatoes in this line.
The 6th variety in the Prince collection at this point is called Purple Rain. It's the only non-cherry. It's a medium-sized purple heart with green metallic striping. It's a further refinement of the variety Dwarf Purple Heartthrob, which I worked on and stabilized for the Dwarf Tomato project. I wanted to further refine the heart shape and try to reduce the amount of checking that was happening with Dwarf Purple Heartthrob. I think the flavor may be slightly better as well with the refined version. So again, this is Purple Rain, and I hope you enjoy it.
the largest fruited variety in this series. I grew Purple Rain Dwarf in 3 and 4 stems, and in my conditions the plants reached a height of 3 feet 3 inches or 1 meter. The color of the fruits Bill, in fact, has already described in detail, so I will not dwell on this point, but just say that they are really beautiful, multicolored, heart-shaped. In addition, tomatoes are quite a lot, and the yield of the variety is high. Because of the thin skin, the fruit could sometimes crack, but personally I do not see anything crucial in this. The size of the fruits certainly pleased me, and their weight was from 7 to 15 ounces, or 210 to 439 grams. Inside, the tomatoes are dark red in color, and from the first bite, it became clear that Purple Rain is a very tasty variety, with a deep and balanced tomato flavor, combining both sweetness and acidity. The tomatoes are perfect for salad or eating raw. As I mentioned earlier, the skin of the fruit is thin and tender, they do not store for a long time, so it's better to eat them right away. Perhaps now is the moment when we can summarize some results, so I'll say that it was difficult for me to single out any one variety that I liked more than the others, and whether it is worth bothering with this choice, because each of them is unique in its own way and has its own strong points. The hard work that Bill Yoder did creating this tomato line certainly deserves respect, because most of the time we only see the final result, and we don't even realize how many years it takes to achieve it.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe, and of course, love tomatoes, grow tomatoes. This is the Lucky Garden channel, and see you soon.